Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for another episode of Cranked and Ranked and the second and final part of our Van Halen album ranking. As usual, it is me, Steven, a.k.a. Old Head, and with me, my compadre from the other side of the pond, Mr. Eddie Sparks. How you doing, sir?
Hell yeah, dude. Let's talk about some fucking Van Halen. Like the better half too. Like yeah. Let's really get into the fucking party mode, dude.
Hell yeah. So last episode was the first half of the least to greatest Van Halen. We did 12 through 7 and now we're doing 6 through big old number 1. And yeah, for all of these albums are great. Like this is just going to be us talking about how great albums are. But as usual, in order to do these rankings, we have to be a little bit picky in order to figure out where things go. And do you have anything you want to say before we get started with this episode?
I had a great time doing this list. It was like one long party. But overall, I'm really excited to talk about these top 6, dude.
Yeah, me too. Well, let's not beat around the bush, as they say. Let's go ahead and get started with your number 6 Van Halen album.
Cool. So, my number 6, I've gone for Fair Warning.
All right. Good album.
Hell yeah. The guitar tone is ramped up in its nastiness. Mm-hmm. It's really got much more of an abrasive metal edge to it. Starting out with like Mean Street, it's got this dark, mysterious edge to it and shows off a more mature sounding Van Halen. Dirty Movies keeps that dark feel going. So far, there's not been much upbeat stuff, and it's a lot more plodding and heavier.
There's a good groove on this album.
Yeah, which brings me to Stripper Riff. And it's complete with the ad lib of "Take it all off" with an applause to boot, and this could be one of the earliest, definitely one of the earliest 80s stripper riffs.
Yeah,
like Van Halen, they didn't do it often, but when they did it well, and there's just so many good songs in this half of the episodes, dude.
Yeah.
Sinner Swing, like it's a more upbeat track, but it still has more of an edge to it. Like, you know, David Lee Roth even says the F word.
Yeah,
my God.
Is it weird that it feels off-putting when he says it? Because it's almost like I don't know any other time when he says a cuss word in a Van Halen song, and so when he says like "you look so fucking good," I'm like, oh, Dave. You know, cool it there, buddy.
you can definitely tell that they really focused in on making this a much edgier release. Like there's a lot to it that makes it their kind of nastiest one.
Yeah, and
it's really dark and sleazy. And
this is 1981. Also, this is like when New Wave was in full swing, really, and they were just doing this down and dirty Van Halen album.
Yeah, and there's kind of a trajectory that you can hear as Van Halen goes along, where, sure, the first couple albums kind of follow in the same vein, but then Women and Children First, you start hearing more sounds that Eddie is innovating with, and then here he takes all of the dark stuff and really ramps that up, and there's, like I said, there's a real metal edge to this. Did I get to... Yeah, Hear About It Later starts with chorus. I'm invested. This one definitely has the closest feel to the previous albums so far. And then you get Unchained, which basically laid the foundation for every glam metal riff that followed it. And it's also a fucking tune.
Hell yeah.
Like that song, it's the song I think of when I pick up this album. But like as a whole package, it does kick ass. Mm-hmm. Push Comes to Shove, brings the funk to the table with some sexy bass work. So This Is Love is a catchy one. Sunday Afternoon in the Park has this wild, spooky 80s horror sci-fi sound to it. And One Foot Out the Door closes out the album, continuing those strange but really cool and innovative sonic choices they chose for these last two tracks.
I'll talk about these more when I get to this album, but I keep, especially on One Foot Out the Door, I'm always like, is that a full-on synthesizer, or is that a bass pedal making it sound like that? But I was like, in 81, did they have that? Because it's clearly synths on Sunday Afternoon in the Park, and then it leads into One Foot Out the Door, and it's a bass line, but it's a synthesizer, but it's just so fat and juicy sounding. It's just it's very cool. But I've never known if it's actually Michael Anthony playing something through a pedal, or if it's Eddie Van Halen playing on a synthesizer.
I think Van Halen were just one of those bands that was ahead of the curve.
Hell yeah.
You know, everything they did. You know, when you think, you can point to Van Halen 1 as the genesis of the hair metal era, but glam metal didn't really reach the mainstream properly until about 83. So, there's a good 5 years there where Van Halen were just doing these kick-ass albums before anyone else was even at the fucking party.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, it's a cool album, an edgy album, and one that I've grossly neglected over the years. So I'm gonna give it a lot more love in the future. But yeah, that is absolutely. That's my number 6. Fair warning.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I'm not going to talk about that one yet. So my list, the two that I went back and forth on where they were going to go were number 6 and number 5 for me. And in the end, I was just like, all right, I'm mulling over this way too much. I'm just going to go with my gut. And my gut told me that the number 6 album for me by Van Halen is OU812 from 1988, which is the second album with Sammy Hagar on vocals. And this was an album that for some reason, because I got into rock music and I loved 1984 when it came out, when I was a kid. For some reason, I mean, clearly, if you listen to the last episode, I'm not a big fan of 5150, but that album just flew right past me, and I didn't give two shits about it. And then OU812 came out, and I was a 10-year-old kid, and I ate this shit up. I loved this album.
Yeah.
I didn't care who the singer of Van Halen was. Sonically, this album really did it for me, and it still does. It, to me, out of all of the 4 Sammy Hagar Van Halen albums, this feels the most like a Van Halen album to me.
Yeah.
The sonically, the songwriting wise, I do realize that they still are in the cheeseball area with some of these songs. It's, you know, because I mean, it's Sammy. I think that that's in Sammy's blood. He's more of a heartfelt kind of guy. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems like all of a sudden things shifted that way when he joined. And yeah, you could say it's a lighter version of Van Halen, but it is Van Halen. And there's things that I like about Van Halen that are on all of my favorite albums. It's not just the musicianship or how well a song is written. It's that they throw little weird changes into the songs at times that are totally unnecessary, but make them very cool. And there's a lot of those on OU812. And as cheesy as it is, as much as I like to poke fun at, like on 5150 songs like Dreams, When It's Love is a fucking amazing song. Really well written. It's a pop rock song, but it is one of those things where I'm just like, how does it feel how does it feel when you write a song? I don't know. I want to be in the room when they're throwing this song together, and it's just so just the basics of it are good, but then the way that it's structured is also really good. It is like a perfect pop rock song, in my opinion.
Totally.
And on top of that, you do have a lot of rockers on here, like Mine All Mine, and then into the AFU Naturally Wired. Like it's a more rockin' to me Van Halen than 5150, but it's almost like they're giving you the best of both worlds, which that song is not on this album. but that would be appropriate if they did put that song on this album. But to me, I think I made the reference with 5150 that it sounds like it's a Sammy Hagar album that he got Van Halen to be his backing band. And this feels like a Van Halen album with Sammy Hagar singing on it. It's almost like they had some success with 5150, so I think that they were comfortable enough just to all of a sudden let themselves gel together as a cohesive band. And I think it really shows on this album. It's a solid album all the way through. It's got a great energy all the way through. Even the songs that I find less interesting, the performances just bring them to life. And there's no boring moment on this album. I also love, there were some, big songs when it came out. I think Feel So Good was a hit or on the radio or something. And then Finish What You Started. I've always loved that one. That's got a nice it's like a stripped down kind of groovy. I don't know if groovy is the right thing, but it's got a nice groove to it, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, but overall, this album, not only is it what I feel is the best Sammy Hagar Van Halen album, it's also, out of the four they did, I think it's the one that aged the best. And I think it's because it's got more of a classic Van Halen quality in it, whereas the other three have some of it, but not, I don't know. It doesn't nail it the way that this one does to me. And at the time, like I said, when I was 10 when this came out, and I listened to the fuck out of this album. I had it on cassette, and I just totally loved it. And I still do. It's still a fucking great album, and that is my numero siete. Yes, that's right. Yes, OU812.
Awesome. Well, I can keep the OU812 conversation going because that is my number 5.
Awesome.
See, I've always been of the mindset I treat Hagar era Van Halen and David Lee Roth era Van Halen as kind of two different bands, but I love them equally. So
yeah,
I really enjoy the Hagar vibe, and this album blew me away. And it's the first time I've heard it in quite some time, doing my notes for this, and I forgot how fucking good it is, dude.
Yeah.
And there's so much on here that you would hear and think, oh, this is Eddie's fucking jam. I cannot believe, it even came out in the late 80s. That's like a guaranteed win for me.
Yeah.
But, for some reason, this album, I just didn't pick it up for a long time. And then all of a sudden I sit down for, research for this episode, and I'm thinking, fuck, Mine All Mine is a full-on montage song. It's driving, it's got double kick, pulse, and enough synth to summon the cast of Rocky IV. I fucking love it, And, it was this kind of stuff that I love about the Hagar era. It's just that badass, driving along, kind of swingy, but not giving a fuck what's in its path, kick-ass montage rock. And then track 2, you get When It's Love, and it's kind of this catchy half ballad track. It really gets stuck in your head, and those synths are so deliciously 80s. That I love it.
But my favorite part of the song is that the synth part that plays at the beginning, they do it vocally at the end.
Yeah.
And that always gives me a little bit of the chills. That's when I know that I'm not fully metal, that a part like that in a song can make me go, oh God, that's beautiful. It's so good how they did that.
And there's room for beauty in hard music, There are just some bands that can pull that shit off, and Van Halen was one of them. AFU, Naturally Wired, some serious riffage going on there. So far we've had 3 totally different feels from these tracks, and you and I both like a nice bit of variety on an album. Uh-huh. This album is possibly the most varied of all the Van Halen albums.
I think I would go with that, yeah.
Then you get fucking Cabo Wabo. Once again, a whole other feel. It's got this like kind of Zeppelin-esque groove running through it. Then you get Source of Infection, dude. Up tempo Van Halen. Always a big fan of that kind of swing feel they break out. And then so far there's just something for everyone here. And this song in particular is just this fucking onslaught of badassery. And like I'd say, what is it? Mine All Mine and Source of Infection so far were my two favorite tracks because they just take everything I love about this era of rock music and crank it to fucking 11.
They must have known that because that's how they start each side of the record. Mine All Mine is side A and Source of Infection is side B.
They're really energetic openers.
Yeah.
I would definitely say that. Feels so good. It's like, ooh, a nice bit of synth. Me likey. Finish what you started. That kind of bluesy, twangy, groovy classic rock kind of feel. Black and Blue is just straight up plodding kick-ass rock. Sucker in a three-piece, sticking it to the suits, man. Straight up hard rock goodness.
Yeah, these millionaires are sticking it to those suits. I think even when I was 10, I was like, aren't these dudes like rich rock stars? Like, what are they talking about?
It's like, I kind of liken it to when Judas Priest were in their Turbo era, and you listen to the lyrics of songs from Turbo, and they're all like 40-year-old dudes at this point, but they're singing like these most teenage lyrics possible.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes that's a good thing. Other times it's a little bit
ham-fisted.
Cringy. Yeah, or that, yeah.
But finally you get Apolitical Blues, which is just straight up a blues rock track.
Which I don't know if I've ever heard that song, because that's not on the cassette or vinyl, which is the only two ways I've ever heard this album.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Holy shit. That's the thing. That's the thing of growing up in my generation. Everything's a reissue, so everything has a bonus track.
Oh, so it's a cover song.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Ah.
It looks like it was maybe a song by Little Feat.
Possibly.
I think.
Yeah.
It says it's credited to Lowell George, who was in Little Feat. But yeah, anyway, I don't know it. I'll have to go back and listen to it.
Cool. Yeah. OU812. I had to stop myself then from saying OU818 because that's a Mr. Bungle demo that I also love. And we keep cycling back to Mr. Bungle.
Spoiler alert, it's not the last time they're going to be brought up in this episode either. So, yeah. Also, the name OU812, I've just always I really like it. And I don't know what it's necessarily supposed to mean, but after 5150, I'm just like, okay, that's a code for something, like a police code, I think. And then this one, it's just like, what does it mean? Nothing. It just means OU812, like another. You ate a piece of it, also.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a fuck off title, and I love it. So
you gotta love good fuck off titles, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is OU812.
Cool. And so let's quickly move on. So I said that there were two of mine that were battling for position. And this one, originally, I was like, it has to be in the first half, but maybe it should come up in the rear for certain reasons. But at the end, when I went back and listened to it again...
He said rear.
And... But I went back and listened to it again, and every time, if you take this album and OU812 and you say, which one would you rather listen to, this one wins every time. My number 5 is A Different Kind of Truth, the last Van Halen album.
Wow.
And came out in 2012, and at the time, I didn't really give it a good shot, because the lead single was the song Tattoo, which to me is the worst song on the album, and it starts the album. So I remember hearing it, but not really paying much attention to it until a couple years later, I think. And that's when I really started to catch on to how fucking good it was and is. And it's a 14-year gap between albums for Van Halen, but it was a almost 30-year, am I right here? Almost 30-year gap for David Lee Roth being in Van Halen. So 84, 94, almost 30-year gap.
Yeah.
From the last Van Halen album with David Lee Roth to this one. And the big thing about this is that to me, this feels like a Van Halen album. The fun is back. The attitude is back. The fucking performances of everybody on this album. Like you think about dudes like, so, I mean, were they in their 50s when they did this album? And
Ooh, yeah.
They kick a lot of fucking ass in this. Everybody. Well, I guess Wolfgang is not in his 50s, but still. So yeah, this is the one album where Michael Anthony had been kicked out or left. Van Halen and Eddie Van Halen's son, Wolfgang Van Halen, stepped in as a bass player, doing a phenomenal job. But also, I think he tastefully paid tribute to Michael Anthony's bass playing. Because there's little things like like Michael Anthony would do those staccato bass things underneath stuff, creating that extra layer of rhythm.
Yeah.
And he does a lot of that. And so I think that dude deserves a lot of credit for stepping in when he's asked to, but also just not making it, I'm going to do my own thing. No, he helped them create a fucking Van Halen album. And there's so much good energy on this. There's so much good grooves. There are so many great songs that remind me of how the old Van Halen made me feel. Sometimes it's just a fun vibe. Sometimes it's kind of a real rockin'. It's a rock song in a way that you could tell they didn't give two shits about what the song was going to be. They just threw some ideas out there and did it. And then because they're experts at this shit, it just comes out sounding amazing. And so I know that I don't know how many of these songs stemmed from stuff they wrote in the 70s, but some of them at least do. All I really have to go off of is what you can get from like a Wikipedia article, and I don't know how much faith to put in that. But overall, it appears that these were all kind of older riffs and songs that they reworked or whatever. And I think that was a great idea, especially when you're getting a band back together, a classic band. I almost feel like every band that's had a really long gap that's really well known and they're older now, I think this is the first thing they should do just to get their chops back up. Revisit some old shit. Don't re-record your hits, but take some B-sides, take some leftovers, at least to help you. Because I think that that's why this album is so good, because they didn't just say, we're going to write brand new Van Halen songs, because that may have sucked. I mean, you never know. And so just the fact that they put out an album with this amount of energy and that's this enjoyable, 34 years later, I think is how long from their first album, because you have 78 to 2012. And it's just, this is fucking Van Halen to me. As much as you made a really good remark about Sammy Hagar, about you almost have to separate it as a different band. Yeah. And when you're being honest with yourself, you could like both of those bands, which I do, but I prefer Van Halen with David Lee Roth. And hearing this again every time, even now, like 8 years later, I'm still like, this album is so good. It's almost like, it feels like a band celebrating their past, having a great time playing together again. It doesn't sound forced. It sounds like a natural album. It doesn't sound like a band retreading stuff. It still has a freshness to it that's really strange, because it also has a nostalgia to it. Really, it's pretty genius that they walked that tightrope of not sounding dated, but at the same time completely celebrating who they were at the beginning. And really the only thing, these aren't necessarily bad things about the album, but the I guess the bittersweet thing about this now is, one, it's the last Van Halen album since Eddie Van Halen has now passed, but also Michael Anthony is not on here, and that just bothers me for some reason. And it only really bothers me when it comes to the backing vocals, because they tried their best. You can tell they recorded some high pitched backing vocals to give that the Michael Anthony kind of thing that he would do. but it's not the same. I don't know how that dude hit some of those notes he hit. Like he's like way the fuck up there doing those high harmonies, and does
playing bass at the same time.
And playing bass, but also he has a voice that just fit right in the pocket to where if a lot of those Van Halen albums weren't done in the 70s, I would go, that's fucking auto-tune. you know, I would, but that's how great he was at that. So he's missed on this album, but nothing you can do about that. This album is what it is, and Wolfgang did an amazing job on this. The whole band did an amazing job on this, and I'm glad that, you know, if that we got one more album and this was it, because this is a nice. I think you're going to see as the years go on, this is going to be one of those albums that more and more people are going to be like, did anybody hear that last Van Halen record? Because they fucking nailed it on that, and they did. Even if the song "Tattoo" is a little bit, whatever. The rest of it's fucking great. So that's why it's my number 5.
Yeah, just cycling back to what we were saying about Michael Anthony's vocals. It's very much like when we kind of touched on, you often find with certain bands that do kind of gang vocal stuff, like Def Leppard, for example. We spoke about it in those episodes we did. Some voices just work together perfectly. And Van Halen is just one of those. Like, all of the dudes in that band sang, as far as I know. Did Alex do a little bit, or was he?
I don't know. I don't think I ever saw him doing vocals, but I mean, I don't even know how often I saw Eddie doing actual backing vocals. I guess he did them.
Yeah, I think. Oh, what was it as well? I was thinking of. I think the cool thing about that last Van Halen record as well is the fact that aside from David Lee Roth, it's pretty much a family band. you know, it's like 3/4 of them are Van Halen, which is cool. But,
I mean, I have to say that if they were going to get somebody to replace Michael Anthony, I like that they did that and not just get some studio bassist or some other dude. Maybe that's why, you know, Wolfgang understood the importance of celebrating what Michael Anthony did, even though he wasn't there. It sucks that he wasn't there. Yeah,
but let's just be thankful that he's on most of them. He's on most of the records.
That's true. He is. he's still collecting his checks. He's doing good.
Definitely. So my number 4 is Women and Children First.
Hey, okay. Cool.
Hell yeah. So right off the bat, you can hear it in the very first few notes of this album, and The Cradle Will Rock, which is an absolute anthem, is actually an electric piano. And it's just such an interesting sonic choice, showing that Van Halen were up for experimentation so early on in their career. Because really, they were only 2 years into having albums out. You know, this was 1980, I believe.
Yep.
It's the first 80s record. Then you follow it up with Everybody Wants Some, gives us this killer 1-2 punch. And then you get Fools, man. Like when that mean riff kicks in, dude, like it's really hammering on that riff. Yeah. It does go on a bit at nearly 6 minutes, but the parts where it shines are damn good. Romeo Delight, you know, god damn, those are Hetfield levels of down picking at points. That took me off guard when I stuck that song on, and I just started hearing these rapid chunks, just chug, 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 chug. I was like, what the fuck? Is this a thrash album? But it sounds fucking chunky, and the guitar on that track is mind-blowing. Tora Tora, or as David Lee Roth would do, like a Tora kind of like overdub or something. It's kind of a prelude to the next track, but it gets you hyped. And
it sounds like the intro of a Black Sabbath song to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. I get that exact same kind of vibe. There's a real Iommi feel to it. I thought, so they've just hit me with a thrash song, and now they've gone doom. Fuck, you know.
They do whatever they want. They're Van Halen.
And that's the thing I love about these, like, the albums where you can really hear the experimentation. Because as much as they had a core sound, they would throw little things in there that they didn't have to put in there, but they make the music so much better. And you get Loss of Control. Oh my God, the speediness of this song. You know, I forgot how impressive on a musical level this album really is, because God damn, like some of the parts in that song just make me go, what the fuck are they playing there? But it sounds so good.
Yeah, that song is like the highlight of the album for me, because it's not, as much as I love Everybody Wants Some, but that is like a Van Halen song. Loss of Control is like, where did this song come from? And that's why I love about them. They would do these tracks where they just said, fuck it, we have an idea, let's do it. It doesn't matter. Who cares?
Yeah.
We do whatever we want. And it just comes out sounding so badass. And it just lets the album breathe. It has different moods and stuff. And it's especially like lyric or vocally speaking, when it comes to David Lee Roth, the lost control, like that doesn't sound like a David Lee Roth thing. Yeah. But it's great. I just love hearing them take chances, and that's why it's fun. So let me go ahead and do it. Loss of Control was covered by Mr. Bungle on their live thing they did, which was called The Night They Came Home or whatever. It was a live stream thing. And their cover of Loss of Control is pretty fucking sweet. So,
I'll have to check it out, dude.
So once again, talking about Mr. Bungle, it just seeps in. Even if we don't want to, it's going to come in somehow.
Hell yeah. But like, I'm not complaining. I love me some Bungle.
Yep.
But Loss of Control. I actually went and looked up covers of the song because I wanted to see it being played, and I wanted to know exactly what was going on. Because some of the stuff, like, if I recall correctly, it's been a minute since I saw the video, but there's a video of two guys, one guy's on guitar and one guy's on drums, and some of the limb independence played on the drums is fucking mind-blowing. And as a drummer myself, I think, God damn, I need to step up, dude.
That's another thing. At this point, we haven't really given a lot of props to Alex Van Halen, because that dude is a monster.
Jesus Christ.
In the best ways, because he can do some more complicated things, but also he can hold the groove down in the pocket to where it just feels perfect. And that guy, I'm sure for drummers, he's probably a guy that drummers talk about a lot. But I don't hear it a lot, but everyone, I mean, obviously that's the thing that's interesting about this band to me, is that all four of the dudes, like even David Lee Roth, he's not the best singer in the world, but nobody sounds like David Lee Roth. Nobody plays guitar like Eddie Van Halen, and Michael, and so on and so on. They are a band of four unique virtuosos that just made amazing music. And that's why I think there are some bands that like people lose their shit over, and I'm like, I get it. I get why you would over Van Halen, because it's just, there's no other band like them.
Totally agreed. And it's like you said with David Lee Roth, you don't have to be a classically trained, perfect pitch singer to be able to work a crowd like a motherfucker. Because that dude, was he into like gymnastics? Because the dude could pull off crazy stage moves and stuff.
I think he's been into everything, physically speaking. I feel like he's done karate. He's done acrobatics, probably. Who the fuck knows? But I mean, he's been a limber motherfucker from day one.
Yeah. It's one of those cases where, maybe he's not, Pavarotti, but God damn, can that fucker work a crowd?
Yeah, Pavarotti couldn't sing Van Halen. That's why
for sure.
As great as that dude is, he's good at that style of music. You put him in front of some heavy guitars, that dude would be totally lost. So, and you know what? And on the other side of things, if you put David Lee Roth in the middle of some opera style music, I think David Lee Roth would find a way to make it work.
Yeah. For sure. I totally agree. We'll have to do David Lee Roth at some point as well. Just his solo records.
His solo stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Back to my track by track. We've got Take Your Whiskey Home, this kind of bluesy groover. Can't go wrong with that. And then you get Could This Be Magic? Shows off that some pretty acoustic playing, showing that they've diversified a lot since the first two records. And then you get In a Simple Rhyme, just this big rock song destined for stadiums. But also, I have one gripe with this album. That riff they chucked on at the end of the song should have been its own full-length song. That riff was wasted, dude. That fucking riff rules.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. But I mean, they could have made another song, but they didn't. They put it at the end of that one. I don't know. That's one of the charms of their early stuff is that they're technically around 8 songs, around 30-ish minutes, and you get everything you need. There's no filler. And
True.
so
that doesn't strike me as a filler riff though, dude. That thing's killer.
But you know what? When you're Eddie Van Halen, sometimes you have to take a great riff and just put it somewhere.
True that. But that's my number 4 with Women and Children First.
Awesome. That is also my number 4, Women and Children First.
We matched. Cheers.
Cheers. So I mean, there's not a lot more we can say about this album. It's a really great album, and the cool thing about it to me in the evolution of Van Halen, we talked about last time about how Van Halen 2 was kind of a misstep. It's an underwhelming album following Van Halen 1. This is not. It's almost like they had the momentum and the time to put together another great album, and it was still done 1 year after Van Halen 2 to the month it came out.
Yeah.
They were doing one album a year, which also included their touring cycle. So I feel like maybe my assumption is correct about Van Halen 2, where they didn't expect the album to blow up, their first album, and so they weren't quite prepared when they did Van Halen 2. It's still good. It's just, you hear here that they had better shit to do. And to me, from this point on with Van Halen, not to give anything away, from this point on with Van Halen, they continued to progress in a very impressive way. Like I love that. I love their discography because of how the albums start going from this point on. And we already talked about Cradle Will Rock. Everybody wants some. Great opening tracks. I said this some on the first episode that it is interesting that the production style for the first like fucking 5 albums or 6 albums is so much the same.
Yeah.
All of the instruments kind of have the same space. It has the same vibe overall. It's just, it seems like as the band was getting better at writing songs, Ted Templeman was getting better, I guess, at doing his version of their sound. So this does sound better. Like each album starts sounding better and better up until an album that we'll talk about later. But this just has a beefier sound, which I think is the thing that I like about it, is that it sounds, because heaviness isn't just loud guitar. Like you need to feel the bass guitar and the kick drum. It's important, to feel those things. And this just feels like a way more inspired album. Really, like, I don't have anything bad to say about it. There's no weak tracks. It's just killer shit from beginning to end. And really, I think that when it comes to Van Halen, I mean, I'm assuming they already had solidified their fan base at this point, but I feel like this was an album that if I had heard it at the time, I was 2, so I didn't hear it at the time. It probably would have been an album that made me say, "Oh, these motherfuckers are here to stay." Like it has that kind of quality. So that's why it is also my number 4, Women and Children First.
Cool. So my number 3. Now we are in stone cold classic territory at this point. We're deep into that section of this ranking.
But I have a feeling that we may match up with something. But there's going to be, I can tell because there's an album you haven't talked about yet, and so we're getting into some territory where we're not quite going to match up somewhere.
I think there's one that was way further down your list, but the other two we could match up on.
We could. Let's find out what happens.
Okay, so my number 3 pick is 1984.
Oh God!
Is it?
Whoa!
Is that a matchup or is that a
no?
Wow.
Number 3. Like
Number
I
three.
feel like those dudes on YouTube. I want to comment on it, be like, "What the fuck? Putting 1984 at number 3? Go clean your ears out, jerk off." Anyway, sorry. I didn't mean to play my hand there, but I was surprising. All right, let's talk about 1984.
Well, here's the thing, right? These top 3 for me could swap any day of the week.
Okay.
But this one, as I analyzed the songs I love from each one, now I look at it, I think it does look odd seeing it at number 3. But I've made my list and I've got to stand by it. So
Hey, I'm all about it. If we did the same albums for the rest of the episode, that would be boring.
Hell yeah. So starting right off, we got track 1, 1984, just this badass synth intro.
Hopefully we don't get some sort of copyright thing. They're going to be like, take that down. That sounds too close to the original.
Oh man, seriously though, that intro gives me goosebumps because I'm like, oh man, I feel like I'm at a fucking stadium and they're about to come on stage to jump.
Now, please welcome. Yeah, you can hear that shit underneath it.
Van Halen! But then you get Jump, which, is such a classic song. You can't argue with the synth work. It's so good. And the solos, both the guitar and the synth solos, are iconic and show that Eddie wasn't just a ripper on his main instrument. He could shred on fucking keyboards, anything. The dude is amazing. Panama is the soundtrack to driving a Trans Am. It is just the ultimate badassery, just driving down the strip kind of thing. Top Jimmy is just this upbeat and fun kind of thing that kind of boils over and then kicks off. And oh man, like the track listings of these top 3 for me are just like banger after banger. Drop Dead Legs, one of the best stripper riff songs of all time. Then you get Hot for Teacher, which is the finest example of that upbeat, swingy Van Halen rock and roll thing that I am in love with. Especially that, as we were saying about Alex Van Halen earlier, that intro, I have tried for years to piece together which arm is meant to be doing what. Like,
I feel if I was a drummer, I would play that every time I got behind a kit.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, I'm fine for like the first like 4 beats, and then his limbs start doing their own thing, and I'm kind of like, wait, which arm is doing which? Because I'm pretty sure all of the until the toms come in, like all of that. It's
a double kick, right?
It's double kick, but he's got a kick drum that he hits with his hands as well.
Oh,
so.
Okay.
That's
how he's doubling up the sounds there.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's called a gong drum when you have a it's basically a bass drum turned into a tom, but it makes a bass drum sound that you hit with your hand, and he's just doing these fucking rudiments on like 3 separate kick drums, and you're hearing it as like, wow, his feet are doing something wacky, but God, it's just such a great song from start to finish. Like, and it's even got great guitar playing from Eddie, great, vocals from everyone. Even Michael Anthony, like you said, he's doing, but then my homework was never quite like this.
Yeah.
Like way up there with real power and conviction. And whenever the Hot for Teacher video comes on, I'm just like, I'm stopping everything I'm doing. I'm sitting down and appreciating this fucking work of art.
Yeah,
'Cause-
I feel like that the lyrical content takes away from how brilliant the song is.
yeah.
Like and the performances and everything. And really, Hot for Teacher is a song that I would say I feel it's the quintessential Van Halen song because sure, maybe it doesn't have some of the qualities that the songs on the first album have that are classics, but when you take what Van Halen were capable of doing, songwriting wise, performance wise, and amazing production, and throw all that together in one track, I think that Hot for Teacher is that track.
Yeah, agreed. 100%. It's just everything great about Van Halen in one place.
Yeah.
Then you get I'll Wait. You cannot fuck with the synth on that song. It's just got such a great groove to it. It's got a great sound. And it just goes to show as well, like, during this kind of era of Van Halen, it showed that you can write a rocking song without the guitar being the main riff.
Yeah.
You know?
And that song has a co-writer. Do you know who the co-writer of that song is?
Oh, shit. Who is it? I'm going to kick myself.
Michael McDonald.
Really?
Yep.
Holy shit.
What a fool believes. I mean, he was everywhere in the 80s. Like, it's almost like Michael McDonald just showed up on everyone's album at some point.
It's funny you should say that because I immediately thought there's a Toto song called I'll Be Over You. And in the music video, Michael McDonald is there doing backing vocals in the song.
Yeah.
But every now and again, you'll see his face like cross dissolve of him like looking dramatically at the camera. And it's like, heart stops breaking. It's just like whenever he appears, I think, you're not in Toto. Like, you're just Michael McDonald who just turned up for the shoot.
Yeah. I mean, this is probably an odd one that we can do in the future when we want to throw ourselves something a little bit different. But I mean, how do you feel about the Doobie Brothers?
Dude, like what I've heard, I love that kind of classic, like 70s kind of rock stuff. I've been really delving deep into that kind of stuff in the last like few years. Loving it.
Yeah, there's a lot of bands that fall into that category that I don't like, but I've always really enjoyed the Doobie Brothers. So maybe that's one day when we want to delve further back into the 70s, we can do that.
Hell yeah. We got some dad rock going on.
Well, it wasn't dad rock then. I mean, the word doobie is in their name. They were smoking doobies, man. All right, anyway, let's get back on to 1984.
He said doobie. But yeah, Girl Gone Bad. Now, something about these last two tracks always comes off as like, oh, hey, we've done some like really sing-along tracks in like the first 2/3 of this album. Yeah. Let's do two really intense, heavy ones at the end because we're fucking Van Halen and we can do what we want.
Yeah, this part of the album fucking kills it for me. Like it's those songs are so good.
Yeah, like intense and wild, grinding. You know, these two are the heaviest moments on the album, and to think you start off with Jump and end with House of Pain, you know? That almost sounds like a fucking like nu metal song, like House of Pain.
Well, there was it was a white rap group, so maybe that's the connection.
Oh man, like everything just roots back to fucking Van Halen. Mr. Bungle, nu metal, it's all secretly tied to Van Halen. But yeah, like, it is a fantastic record, and it's one of the Van Halen albums I pick up. But yeah, that is my number 3.
Okay, my number 3 is not 1984. But we're not going to match up at all, I don't think. We may on number 2, but I don't really know yet. My number 3 is Fair Warning from 1981. Hey. And if you listen to what I was saying earlier about Women and Children First, the albums continue to get better in my opinion. And this one, the one thing I love so much about it, which you brought up, was the groove of this album. The bass guitar is front and center in this album, and it sounds so good. This is probably when it comes to a more sort of classic production style, this is where they nailed it the best in my opinion. It's just it's the overall spacing of everything is kind of similar. Although some tracks I noticed that they actually put the guitar in the middle or double it on both sides, which they didn't do that much early on with Van Halen. But
I think that's what helps it sound a little chunkier as well.
Yeah, but not all of it is like that. There's some of just, left channel Eddie Van Halen like you would get normally. But really it's like I said when you were talking about it, the fact in 81, all of these things that were super popular in 81, yes, sure, I guess there was rock music that was still popular, but the stuff that was like the big selling stuff or the stuff that was on MTV, I guess MTV hadn't happened yet, right? That was 82. Fuck, I don't remember.
No, it was 81.
Oh, it was 81. Okay. Because it was all, new wave kind of stuff. And even some of the classic 70s peeps were going into the new wave kind of territory, adding and it's funny because eventually Van Halen would full on embrace keyboards, and sure, there's a little bit of that on this album, but it doesn't sound like they're jumping on any bandwagon. This is still Van Halen just doing whatever the fuck they want in 1981, and I love that about them. And they progress how they naturally want to progress. And so I would say that there's not, like, the biggest standout track on this album is clearly Unchained.
Yeah.
But that's not the point of the album for me. Like, I really just get kind of lost in the mood and the groove and the performances of the album. I almost, the actual songwriting on it, sometimes I don't even pay attention to it. It just feels really good listening to this album. And I love how, you get to like Push Comes to Shove, and that sounds like it could have been disco. But at this point, we're in 81. Disco sucks is already a thing. And they're still like, whatever, we're going to use this kind of groove because fuck it, And that's one of the many reasons why Van Halen ruled. They did whatever they wanted, and it always, most of the time, especially on the Dave albums, ended up sounding fucking great. And so once again, that alone, the mood of the album, the production of the album, the performances, the overall vibe makes it an album that I love. And then you put Unchained on top of that being this utter classic Van Halen song. And then you get the wrap up of Sunday Afternoon in the Park into One Foot Out the Door, which it's so just like, I wasn't expecting this, but this sounds amazing. It's just a couple of 2-minute tracks going into each other that just take you into a different place. And it's almost like, in hindsight, it's almost like the band letting you know, hey, next time you see us, we are going to have progressed beyond what you're expecting. And I feel with 1984 that's what happened. Like they made the biggest album of their career. And so now, listening to the last couple tracks on Fair Warning, it really feels like a band so confident. They're just like, we're going to blow your mind. So, ta-ta for now, but next time you see us, we're going to be bigger than you could ever imagine. And it just feels that way. And I just, this album is just so great. And I love hearing Van Halen be Van Halen, because when they do it and they just do whatever comes naturally to them, it just shines a huge spotlight on the fact that they were one of the best rock and roll bands ever. So, and there you go. That's my number 3, Fair Warning.
Awesome. Yeah, can't argue with that. These upper echelon of albums, man. It's just, imagine having a repertoire this fucking good. Yeah. Like, just not even just down to individual songs, but like these albums, especially the upper ones. God damn. And even, we've said it before. Regardless, I don't think that they're one of the, some albums more so than others, but I don't think Van Halen tends to get critiqued as much production wise, because they just had such a unique sound to them. Because really, like, aside from maybe some tom samples on 5150, they never really succumbed to the trend of those big reverb snares or things like that, you know, that dominated the 80s rock kind of thing.
No, I mean, a really great example of them not following trends was by 1988, the music that they had created had become huge, and all these bands were running with it and making these big, huge sounding, sort of glammy metal albums, and they made OU812, which is...
Yeah.
And so they didn't give a shit. They were like, yeah, you guys can go play with all that shit all you want. We're over here doing our Van Halen shit.
It's kind of like the, I created you kind of thing, you know? You don't tell me what to do. I put you in this world and I can take you out.
Yeah, we make the trends, guys.
Hell yeah. I think as well, if you look at like this kind of, is it around this Hagar era that in OU812, just cycling back to that album for a second, is that when they started flanneling up their look, you know, or did that not start until For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge?
I don't really remember because just in my brain, I don't remember what they were wearing in the videos off of OU812, but
yeah.
I don't know.
They didn't really do the whole glammed up thing.
No,
at that point.
They never followed any kind of trend. Like that's the one of the many great things about them. And then they didn't need to. And so, I mean, not that I have a problem with, you know, people are influenced by whatever they're influenced by. And if I see somebody wearing some cool clothes and I go, wow, that looks really good, why would I not go get myself some of those clothes? If it so happens that it's a trend, well, then so be it. I like how it looks. You know, it's like, it's the same thing when I was young wearing metal t-shirts. I wore them because the metal bands were big and that's what I was listening to. So I was also following trend. And so it's a dumb thing to critique when it comes to a band, you know, haircuts and styles and clothings, and because it's just like, who cares? Like if you think something is what you're wanting to do, then you do it. Who cares? So I mean, at the end of the day, even though I am still one of those people where I see a picture of like this new hit metal band, and I look at them and they all look like they work at Best Buy or something, like they're all short haired, but they all have neck tattoos.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you guys don't look like a rock band. And I have to stop myself from being like, I don't want to listen to you because you look like turds. Sorry, guys.
There's a certain average Joe kind of look to metal bands these days that does kind of make me, you know, like I say, at the end of the day, the music is what matters. But I think there is a certain level of image that does kind of matter if you want to entice a certain crowd. Because, like, if you dress like an emo band, you're not going to appeal to a thrash fan, regardless of how fucking rocking your music is.
I don't know. From what I've gathered, it doesn't matter too much. I think that especially my way of thinking is very old school. I don't think anybody cares about hair and clothes anymore. I mean they do, but I don't think that you know dictates how they're going to feel about a band. I'm the old fogey that's just like, I don't know, why can't people just look like they're metal anymore? Jeez. And then the dudes that do look like they're metal, they're going too far. They're like, it's like really heavy-handed, where it's like you got a leather jacket and a battle vest and some studs on your bracelets, and it's like, you know, it's like, come on, dude. Okay, you don't need to go that far. It's overdoing it.
Hell yeah. But overall, yeah, where were we? I've kind of...
Sorry, we're now on to your number 2 Van Halen album.
So this one, for me, is kind of my equivalent to you putting a different kind of truth so high up. Because you put this one quite low. And me, being a fan of all things 80s cheeseball, I put 5150. 5150, baby.
All right. I mean, there are probably some people listening that are like, right on, man. 5150 rules. I'm just not one of them.
Yeah, for me, the first time I heard this, I was like, holy shit, this is like 1984, but with an even more 80s glammed up sounding singer. And it does sound pretty much like a glam metal album in places. It's still Van Halen, but I do agree it does sound like Sammy Hagar with Van Halen as the backing band. But I like that. I like that in a weird kind of like, I would say this is the most 80s sounding album they ever did.
Yeah.
So focused. I mean, you're talking 1986, so this would have been peak 80s. So, yeah, you get Good Enough, which is a great opener. Why Can't This Be Love? I will admit, that one's not as great to me as How Do I Know When It's Love? Because that's a much better written song. It's still a tune, but I will say Get Up. God damn, that's a great track. And it's got that kind of double kick, furiously unrelenting assault of badassery thing going on. And they just tear it up in that song.
I mean, yeah, there's still enough Van Halen on here to not make it like a total wank off of an album. It's just yeah. So no, you're totally right on. When those moments come on in this album where they are, in full rock mode, it still sounds fucking great.
I will say, I'm gonna step in and I'm gonna defend Dreams.
All right.
This is why I love this era of Van Halen. It's just drenched in that Rocky IV level of synth that I fucking love hearing in this kind of era of rock and metal music. Just, hey, all of these keys presets exist. Let's throw them all on the track and just fucking make it this spectacle.
Yeah.
And, Summer Nights has got that pure 80s strip riff goodness. Best of Both Worlds is a good time rock and roller. Then you get Love Walks In, which is another awesome synth-laden ballad. 5150 is kind of this slightly progged up good time rocker. And then Inside is this catchy, moody track at the end. But I just love how over the top this album is. There's so much cheese. It could be a fucking double quarter pounder. It's got that much cheese.
Also, I really do think, and this is just me from my memory, and because I've never liked it, I think when I was a kid, I hated the album cover. I don't know what it was I hated about it, but I was just like, this doesn't look like anything I want to listen to. And so, and even today I look at it and I go, I get what they were going for, but it's pretty dumb. It's pretty dumb.
It's kind of like saying, hey, this is a heavy album because there's a big, chunky, muscle dude holding up this giant bowl with the fucking Van Halen logo on it. We're a real heavy band.
And he can't quite lift it because they're so heavy.
But then you whack it on and it's just this fucking...
Or whack it off.
Yeah, or whack it off. It's just this big, synthed out, big hair album. And I love it for that reason. And as much as I love 1984, there's just a certain over-the-topness to this album that... I have a condition called montage music brain, where I will hear any 80s music, and if it's got like a really cool motivational sounding synth in it, I'm like, I'm gonna get so much done today.
If Sammy Hagar's on it, it's even better. I feel like Sammy Hagar did a montage song in like 50 movies in the 80s.
Yeah, fun fact, he actually did a song for Over the Top.
I had that soundtrack when I was a kid.
Oh man, that's a good film.
I haven't seen it in years because I know that I'm probably going to watch it and it's going to be really dumb. And like I want to still see it through a kid's eyes, where I'm like, that was so cool. They were just he turns his hat around backwards and then he's better at arm wrestling.
I wonder how many people did that after that album came out and got their asses handed to them.
That is definitely like a weird trendy thing. Like it was like like arm wrestling. That's the big thing now. Let's do a movie about arm wrestling.
But yeah, like this album, 5150, so kick ass. I love it.
It's got its good qualities. I'm not I as much as I guess I talked a little bit of shit about it, but I mean it's still some quality stuff. And I think I pointed out that my favorite thing about it is that they did make this transition with a new singer, and it doesn't sound retread. You know, they didn't just do a Van Halen album again with Sammy Hagar. So maybe the fact that it doesn't sound too much like a straight up Van Halen album was to its benefit in the end.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Cool. Well, you know, we are not matching up at all. so that's just one of those things. It makes a more interesting episode. And so my number 2 is the album that would be most people's number 1, and I absolutely understand why it would be your number 1, but it is not my number 1. My number 2 is the debut album from 1978, Van Halen 1.
Wow.
And this is, I mean, you know, there are some albums that, you know, you have those memes where you can insert an album cover and it's just like, take the power of this or whatever the meme might be. You just put the album cover of Van Halen 1 and you don't need to say anything about it. It's become like a symbol of everything good about rock music. You know, it's just, and it's not even that interesting of an album cover. It's just 4 pictures of the dudes in like a smoky dark room. I don't know. I don't know if they
all
were
cool and swishy.
Were they? I think it was a live performance that these were from, because the other picture on it is them all sweaty backstage.
Yeah.
But this is like, I'm going to be quick because everyone talks about this album. Everyone loves this album. I can't add anything that anyone else hasn't already said. This is just, it feels like a greatest hits album, and it's their first album. Yeah. Every track, for the most part, there's a couple that I wouldn't put on that list, but Running with the Devil, like, I'm not going to go track by track because I want you to do that. But just, you know, that song's already great. And then going into Eruption, which Eruption is now like I was, this album came out like 2 months before I was born, or a month before I was born. So I didn't get to hear it as a grown person knowing, you know, what I know now. But hearing Eruption for the first time had to have been life-changing for some people. Yeah. Like I could see that. And yeah. And so, but anyway, so it's all these great songs. You got, you know, Jamie's Crying, which Jamie's Crying is one of those songs that I love, but I also love it because I didn't go back to listening to the early Van Halen until I was like a teenager, I think. And so Jamie's Crying to me was Wild Thing by Tone Loc, because he samples it in the song Wild Thing. And so the first time I heard Jamie's Crying, I'm like, oh, that's where this sample came from. Because that's one of the things that I've always loved about, especially old school hip hop, was taking music and turning it into something else. I know people that wrote the songs always try to be all like, that's stealing. And I'm like, I don't understand that. If I wrote a hit song and somebody took it and made it into something different that was also badass, I would be like, more power to you, dude. Like, I'm glad that I made something that made you want to use it for this other music. Now my music lives on in a way that I didn't even fucking intend it to. And so I like hearing those kind of things, and then hearing where the samples come from, because that hits me in my sweet spot, hearing a cool sample. But Jamie's Crying on its own is a great song. But Atomic Punk is one of my favorite Van Halen songs.
Dude,
I love that song. The energy of this whole album. It's one of the strongest debut albums ever made, and the interplay between the 4 band members is already perfected on album number 1. it just sounds so good. It's an all killer, no filler album. There's a couple of tracks that I'm honestly not as big of a fan of Ice Cream Man as some people are.
I'm a fan. I love that song.
But it's fun. It's a fun song, and it breaks up the album. They had a variety of things on their album from day one. And honestly, I've heard this album so much that if I was I don't know, a lot of the kind of things that you hear on the internets, if I was one of those people, I would hate this album because it's fucking overplayed, man. And honestly, when I was listening to them again and ranking them, I'm all like, man, I enjoy Fair Warning and Women and Children First more than this album. But I think it's only because I've heard this album so many times now over the years. And so I had to let that go. And I had to be like, this has to go either number one or number two, just for the strength of what it was, the meaning behind it, the influence that was in its wake. Like we said on the last episode, like a lot of these bands that you and I love, they're all influenced by this album. Like this album doesn't exist. Maybe we don't have thrash metal the way that we do, even though this isn't thrash, but maybe it didn't happen the way that it would have happened. It's such an important piece of the rock and metal puzzle that any praise you heap on it, I think, is still probably not enough praise. And I think this is one of those albums that when you and I are dead and gone, and the majority of music from our era and the 80s, 90s, 2000s has died off, this is one of those albums I think that's going to be looked upon like people look at like old blues albums or whatever and be like, yeah, man, I got that Van Halen 1 in my collection. Like it's going to be one of those albums. And so, so I don't go on for too long about it. It's killer. And it's my number 2.
Well, what I want to highlight before I go into my track by track, because it is my number 1, like, you could put some crowd noise just slightly quieter than all of the rest of the stuff going on this album. And it's like you said, with the energy of it, it's so great and live sounding. You could easily convince someone it's a fucking live album, you know? There's not really too many bells and whistles to it. It's just a straight up rock band doing this kick-ass new take on it. And I'd actually quite like to hear that, to be honest. Now I'm starting to think, hey, I've got Logic Pro at my disposal. I might try doing that. But it does have this phenomenal live feel to it.
It does say on the wiki it was mostly recorded live with just a few overdubs.
And the coolest thing about it is, like you said, it's like a greatest hits album. You could trick someone into thinking this was just a really good live set. Like it's just so fucking good. And you know, it goes without saying, it's this flawless, game-changing album. It revolutionized how hard rock and heavy metal would sound for the next 14 years following it. Well, even to the present day, because it was so monumental for the shred kind of stuff. But god damn, like, the whole track list is flawless in my opinion. There's not one dud here. Yeah. And for everyone who's sick of Eruption, that had a huge impact on guitar playing ever since it came out. And initially, I didn't even really bother with a track by track here because I thought that I would be saying the same thing for every song. But, you know, Running with the Devil, it's got that great plodding groove to it. Eruption changed the fucking game on guitar playing. You Really Got Me is a damn good cover of that Kinks song. And it even shows off, you know, the cool, weird sex noise kind of stuff that David Lee Roth would do in these kind of sections. Oh, 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 like these. He's a wild character. Ain't Talking About Love is one of my favorites.
Yeah, me too.
I'm the One has that upbeat feel. Jamie's Crying.
That one's good too. How did I not talk about I'm the One? Oh, that's so good. Yeah.
Oh, man, like Atomic Punk, like you said, fucking fantastic. Feel Your Love Tonight, Little Dreamer, Ice Cream Man. I love Ice Cream Man. It's great fun. And then closing out with On Fire.
I'm on fire.
God, and it is like you said, this had as much impact on the metal world as it did on the rock world. And
I mean, as we heard, it had an impact. Like a lot of these bands had an impact on hip hop as well.
yeah,
Like bands like Van Halen and Aerosmith and stuff like those. They were sampled, and other bands afterwards. So it's everywhere.
it's just such a flawless work of art, and you can kind of tell that they were like, we don't have any albums yet, so we're still an unknown act. They might have been tearing it up in the club scene, but they needed discs to their name, and to come out of the gate swinging with something this fucking strong is something that most bands wish they could do.
Yeah.
And God, it's just so good, man. Like, I can't see a single track on here that I wouldn't fucking crank.
No, it's the ultimate rock album. Like it's so perfect.
I agree. It's the ultimate rock album, and that is why it resides at number 1 on my list.
Nice. And while I say it is the ultimate rock album, in my opinion, it is not the best Van Halen album.
Which is insane.
The best Van Halen album by far. Like, this album exists on a plane that, and like I realize that half of this is like being critical and the other half is just me following my gut and how I feel whenever I listen to the album. But 1984 is perfect. It is a perfect album that also happened to be a massive success for the band.
Yeah.
And it hits all of the marks that you want a Van Halen album to hit, in my opinion, but with amazing songwriting.
Yeah.
Like every song is so well written. And it was the first one where they actually took 2 years between albums instead of just one. They had done one album a year for 5 albums.
Yeah,
and then,
5 albums.
And then 2 years off and did this one. And they came back with I realize that we're getting into the overplayed territory. And is Jump as good as Running with the Devil? No, it is not. But Jump into Panama, into Top Jimmy, into Drop Dead, like the sequencing of the album and the songs and the way the different things that you get from each track. And it is just, I mean, there's a point in me that actually appreciates the fact that they split with Dave after this album, because I think whatever they did with Dave after this would have been a letdown. Because how do you follow this? And then so you take just the singles. I already said Jump and Panama, but Jump, Panama, Hot for Teacher, 3 iconic tracks that not only are iconic rock tracks, but I don't know if they all 3, but I think Jump especially crossed over into like the pop charts, I think. Like it was a massive hit. And sure, it's got the keyboards and shit on it, but so as I mentioned in the first episode, this album was my introduction to actual rock and roll. And I have a memory. I think I talked about this on an old head episode of the podcast a year ago or whatever. Yeah. I have a distinct memory, an early memory in my head. And so I had to have been 7 years old, I think, when I got this album. Yeah. And my parents really wanted me to play sports. I didn't want to play sports. And they put me in T-ball, which, do you know what T-ball is?
Shit. I'm thinking Is that the one with the ball is on a rope and it spins around a?
No, that's tetherball.
That's where I got it confused.
T-ball is baseball, but for little kids, and they put the ball on a little. It's a tee. It's basically a little stand, and the baseball is put on it, and you hit it off of that. And there's even still a pitcher that makes the pitcher motion. Now's when you're supposed to hit the ball. So my parents put me in that, and of course I sucked at it, and I didn't want to do it. But I remember one day in particular, soon after I got 1984, I can even see it. I can feel it in my brain. The memory is this crisp with me. I'm in the outfield with my glove on and my little baseball outfit for my team, and I'm not paying attention to the game. I'm literally in my head just going, Panama, and balls are coming over, and I'm not paying any attention, and the coaches are like, what are you doing? And I'm just like, I didn't give any fucks about sports or baseball. All I cared about was Van Halen, and very quickly after that, all I cared about was finding other heavy rock music that led me to metal, led me to thrash metal, led me to all the things that, we talk about. And I still feel that today when I hear this album. I still feel that sort of overwhelming, like when this album is on, it is the most important thing I've ever heard, even though it's not one of my favorite albums ever. But it is one of the most important albums ever to me. And then just taking that and listening to it objectively, the performances, the songwriting, the production, everything is absolutely perfect. It sounds amazing. There's no bad song. And they don't just, decide to be a little more poppy for the whole fucking thing. Like we talked about, you get an ending with Girl Gone Bad and House of Pain, which it's some of the heaviest shit they did.
Yeah.
And so as a Van Halen album, to me, even though it's not like, hit after hit or classic after classic, the way that Van Halen 1 is, I feel like this is the best that era of Van Halen ever put out. Just overall as an album, it's pretty unfuckwithable in my opinion. And
I love that term, unfuckwithable.
Yeah, and it has not only my favorite Van Halen album cover, but one of my favorite album covers ever.
Hey,
just the image of an angel kid smoking some cigarettes. and it's weird because he looks like a cross between a baby and an adult. Like he has like adult hands. And everything about this is just one of those album covers. I'm like, who did this, and what were they thinking? Because it's so good. It almost like completely sums up what you're getting on the album without you even realizing that it does.
Yeah,
it's the visual interpretation of 1984. On an album cover, and
just a cherub smoking some Marlboros.
Yeah, I don't know, but just the artwork is great along with the concept, and so just that overall as a package. If somebody said, "Give me a Van Halen album," because of where we are now, like given how much time we've had, with Van Halen, I would go for this album first because I'd be like, you hear everything you need to hear. And it's done as perfectly as they ever did it. And that's why it is my number one.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, these are pretty unfuckwithable albums at the top, man.
Yep.
Like, even now I'm looking at 1984 and I'm thinking that is a 10 out of 10 record.
Yeah.
Like, like I could put any of these top 6 on and have a great time. Like even up into halfway through the fucking last episode, like the top 9 for me.
I mean, really, you don't get to an album where I go nah until you get to Balance.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Like, up until that point, even the Sammy Hagar era stuff, I ain't going to argue with you about putting it on. I'm going to be like, hell yeah. I mean, why not? You know? And that's how many albums? That's 8 and 9 albums, something like that. That's a run of successful albums of a band making it through all these different trends, coming out the other end. Even if I didn't like Balance very much, they still continued to do the things that they did, and they never seemed like they were compromising. Like, obviously we don't know these people, and I think it's just as stupid to say somebody didn't compromise as it is to say somebody sold out, because we don't know them. We weren't there. And so all we have is the little bits of information that we have that you can make your assumptions with. And it seems like Van Halen didn't do that. It seems like they continued to make Van Halen records the way that they wanted to do it up until the end. And unfortunately, there is an end, but we got a lot of great shit to listen to.
And at the end of the day, you know, in my eyes and your eyes too, it's very much a case of, to me, I don't care how much money a musician makes. Good music is good music to me. That's why I'm a big lover of the Black Album. I think, you know, Metallica's first 5 albums for me are like, some people cut off at Justice, some people cut off at Ride the Lightning because of Fade to Black, and I think, come on.
Yeah.
It's great though.
It's perfect. It's personal preference, and even if your reasoning is very flawed, you're allowed to have your own opinions, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. I don't. You know, an album like 1984, there was no. I bet you at the time there were people that were saying they sold out with 1984, but
is that a synthesizer?
Yeah. But the thing that everyone seems to forget is that there's no guarantee. If you take a chance and try to write a commercial album, even if it's all the way through, just completely changing your sound in order to please some, group of people out there, there's no guarantee it's going to do well. So It's not like these people go, oh, it's a surefire thing that if we do this, we're going to make millions of dollars. They don't know that until after the fact. The Black Album could have been really poorly received. Same thing with 1984. And they're both phenomenal albums. We'll get to Metallica eventually. I almost feel like now that we've been putting off getting back to Metallica, there's a part of me that goes, I just want to let that one go out there. Like, give it some space, because everyone knows that it's just going to be us gushing over albums for 2 episodes or however long we decide to do it. But anyway, we're doing Van Halen here. But we did Van Halen. We fucking did it.
We did it.
And I hope you all enjoyed it. I realize that sometimes we end up doing bands that a lot of people talk about. I'm pretty sure there are probably podcasts just devoted to Van Halen already out there for you to listen to. And so we're just 2 other dudes talking about shit that other people talk about already. But we
do it differently enough. I think our ranking and comparing thing makes us gives us an edge.
Yeah, I guess
me
right.
Being half your age.
That too. We are there. I mean, I keep forgetting that we do have a good thing going here, and hopefully everyone. I mean, people do enjoy it. I mean, I get some feedback. There are people. I got some guy that commented that he hopes that we don't slow down the podcast because it helps him get through work every day. And I'm like, oh, great! If this is like, because that makes me feel good that we're that kind of podcast. That people just work. My wife does that. My wife listens to us like while she's working and doing other things.
Oh, that's nice.
And I just like the fact that that we even if that we have that kind of comforting quality that you can just put us on and listen to us, and it's not anything that's going to ruin whatever you're doing. So anyway, enough of us tooting our own horns, I guess. So, you have anything to add to the end of our Van Halen ranking?
Rest in peace, Eddie.
Yeah.
Your legacy fucking rules.
Yeah, a huge. I think he is the biggest loss to rock and roll we've ever had. Like
definitely one of them.
I can't think of one that had that kind of reach that we've lost yet. That wasn't already gone. Like obviously, every guitar player talks about Hendrix. Hendrix died early on, but
Yeah, kind
Eddie
of
Van
27
Halen
club.
is somebody that I can't think of another one. We've had other ones outside of rock music that have died that have been insanely important, but Eddie Van Halen, it feels like a really big one. It feels like even though like they're not a band that I have an emotional attachment to in a way that it really hurt when he died, I still felt it. I almost feel like as they said in one of the Star Wars, where you feel a disturbance in the Force or whatever. Like I feel like Eddie Van Halen dying, you could feel it. Like it just, if you're a rock fan, even if Van Halen's not your favorite band, it's still a thing where it's just like, oh, that hurts. It hurts that he's gone.
Yeah. And I mean, we all knew he had cancer, but he was just, I think there's a certain point at which you become such an icon that you become immortal in people's eyes.
He was a guitar god.
You become a god. And with that comes this like kind of immortality complex that people have around you. And then when you do pass away as one of these, icons, it leaves behind such a void because, you might have left behind an incredible legacy, but there's not going to be any new stuff from this guy because like that's the shock of it.
Also it's I don't know where the quote comes from, but I've always liked it. Death is the great equalizer.
Yes.
And it really does. Like, it doesn't matter how successful you are or how great you are or how much you're going to influence the world. Like some people, are born, they have a job, they die. They made no dent on the world at all, except for maybe within their family. Then there are other people that are leaving a lasting mark on the world, I think, for a really fucking long time. And they also die. So it's like, doesn't matter who you are, eventually you're going to be 6 feet under or ground up into a powder, depending on what you prefer. But yeah, it's a huge loss. And so it was appropriate that we celebrated Van Halen. And thank you for coming to our celebration. Next week, I'm going to go ahead and be bold and say this. Stop me if you don't want me to say it. But next week will not be a podcast episode.
Hey.
Next week will be a video version on my YouTube page, the Old Head YouTube page.
Hey.
Now, I'm hoping that works. We're going to try it. It'll be a shorter form version of this, but people have been asking since we started, hey, couldn't you just put these up as videos and not just a thing where you put album covers as the video? And I'm like, well, I guess we could try. And so we have to try. Eventually, we have to take the leap and try to do a visual version of this. And who knows, if it's well received, maybe that just becomes the second way that we put it out. We'll just film our dumb faces the whole time. I mean, I'm referring to my face. Your face is beautiful. Mine's
you're too hard on yourself, dude.
Trust me, that's why I grew all this hair and beard. It's to cover up all the dumbness of my face. Anyway, thanks for coming to my therapy session. So yeah, that's all I have to say about, we've spoken enough about Van Halen, and this was a fun one. And so we'll wrap it up. And so next week, hopefully, for those of you who are listening to this, you'll be seeing our faces on YouTube for a special video version of Cranked and Ranked. And if not, that just means that something went horribly wrong, technically speaking. So at least we'll let those of you that make it all the way through our podcast, you guys get a little nugget of information. Like, you can go tell everybody if you want to, I guess. But
oh yeah,
But you just don't want to spoil the surprise. Anyway, so thanks for listening. Thanks for continuing to listen. For those of you who are listening as on the podcast, go over to YouTube and search Old Head Podcast, and I think my channel will come up, and that's where the video and all of the quote unquote visual versions of our episodes end up going. And then while you're there, type in Eddie Sparks with 2 X's. Go check out his shit. He just put out a video that I thought was a lot of fun.
Hey, brand new video. I forgot. Yeah, it's already out by the time this is released. But yeah.
I watched it last night. I was having some beers and watching you on my what is my TV, like 85 inches is the one I have. It's big. It's like a movie theater in that room, and
Nice.
and I just got to watch you all big on my screen, bigger than life. And so go subscribe to us, and yeah, that's all I got. I'm not gonna drag this out anymore. This is the hardest part I have is wrapping things up, because I'm like, what do I have to say? Anything else? I don't know. And so I do a whole lot of yeah, okay, whatever. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to Cranked and Ranked. We will see you next time. Eddie, take us out, sir.
Later, dude.